Hello everyone, welcome to my channel Tejasvi Insaan. I am Ankita and back with the 6th episode of Bible Storytime series. And today we are going to listen to the story of Joseph and the dreams. This story is very interesting, hope you will like it. Watch till end. I had the strangest dream last night, said Joseph. He was at home with his brothers in their clamped house in the land of Canaan. His brother glared at him. "No one cares about your dreams," said one. "Stop showing off," said another. Joseph wasn't surprised at their reaction. Each one of his 10 older half-brothers hated him and he was used to it. He would often overhear his brothers whispering about him and calling him cruel names. The bullying had grown worse recently. After their father Jacob brought Joseph a beautiful and expensive coat. The coat was dyed in a rainbow of hues and it shimmered in the sunlight. Joseph stuck out his chin. Let them be jealous. And he thought, "It's not my fault, Father loves me." So he decided to tell him his dreams whether they wanted to hear it or not. "I dreamed that we were in the fields, gathering grain," he began. "Jacob and his sons were all farmers, so that was something that often did together." A chorus of boos and catcalls followed, but Joseph went on. "We were trying up our crops into sheaves. With my chef suddenly rose up and all of your sheaves bowed down to mine." His brother almost spat with fury. "Are you saying you plan to rule over us one day?" "I'm just telling you my dream," said Joseph. But in his heart, he knew that there was something more to what he would see. The next night, he dreamed again, and in the morning he told his brother and his father too. "I dreamt that the sun and the moon and the stars were bowing down to me," said Joseph. Jacob shooed him away. "Are you trying to say your mother and I and your brothers would bow down to you?" He shook his head and Joseph left, his face flushed with shame. His brothers laughed like hyenas to see his brothers getting scolded. Only his younger brother Benjamin gave him a sympathetic smile. Benjamin was never cruel to him. One morning, Joseph's older brothers were looking after their family flock of sheep when Joseph appeared in a distance. "Here comes the dreamer," one of them hissed. "Now we're away from father. Let's get rid of him once and for all." "We should kill him and pretend a wild animal ate him," suggested another. "No, let's just throw him away in a pit," said Reuben, who was the eldest. He didn't love Joseph any more than the others, but he didn't want his brother to become murdered. When Joseph came close enough, the brothers grabbed him, tearing his beautiful coat into pieces. Joseph screamed and struggled, but he couldn't find them all. "Look," said Judah, another of the brothers. He had spotted a group of Ishmaelites in the distance. Ishmaelites were well known for slave trading. "Let's sell Joseph into slavery. Then we will have silver coins and we won't have to put up in a smug and arrogant younger brother bothering us with the dreams any longer." So the brothers sold Joseph for 20 silver pieces and went home to their father. Along the way, they dipped Joseph's torn coat in animal blood. When Jacob saw it, he howled with pain. "No! Oh, my son! Some wild beast must have attacked him. How did this happen?" Before the brothers could answer, he threw himself to the ground, sobbing and tearing his own clothes in grief. "I will mourn until I join my Joseph in the grave," sobbed Jacob. Even now, he still loved Joseph more than any of the rest of us. thought the brothers bitterly. Meanwhile, the Joseph was carried off to the land of Egypt, far from his home in Canaan. He was sold to a man named Potiphar, a high-ranking soldier who worked for the Pharaoh, the king of Egypt. Joseph felt terribly frightened, but he did not have to face his fear alone. God loved Joseph and watched over him. Everything Joseph did turned out well, and the master of his house soon noticed this. His God grants him success, said Potiphar. I will put him in charge of my household so I can share in his good luck. Joseph found himself managing a large and wealthy house, with many slaves working for him. He set to work, and sure enough, God smiled on Potiphar's house. But God was not the only one who was watching Joseph. Joseph was a handsome young man, and Potiphar's wife soon took an interest in him. She called to Joseph one day when Potiphar was out. "Come here and kiss me," she demanded. Joseph was horrified. "I can't do that. Potiphar is my master and you are his wife. It's sinful and it's wrong." He cried to get away, but the woman grabbed him by the cloak, brushing away his cloak tore, leaving a large piece behind. When Potiphar came home, his wife stormed up to him. "Your slave has insulted me. He tried to kiss me. When I said no, he fought me." She held up the torn pieces of cloth. "Look, he left this behind." "How dare he? After all I have done for him," roared Potiphar. He summoned Joseph and began to scream at him. "I didn't do it," said Joseph. "Please believe me." But Potiphar was blind with rage. He had Joseph thrown into the darkest, dankest dungeon in the Pharaoh's palace. Yet Joseph still wasn't alone. God was watching over him. He made sure that the prison guard was kind to Joseph. Before Joseph knew what was happening, he found himself in charge of all the other prisoners. "Thank you, Lord," he prayed. A while later, the Pharaoh's baker and his butler angered the Egyptian king. He threw them in prison. The prisoner guard told Joseph to take them food and water every day. When Joseph went to visit them one morning, the baker looked pale. The butler too seemed troubled. "How do you look so upset?" asked Joseph. "Is something on your mind?" The baker and the butler exchanged looks. "We both had dreams, but we do not know what they mean," the baker said at last. Joseph sat down in the corner of their cell. "Tell me your dreams," he said. So the butler began. "In my dream, I saw a grapevine. On that vine were 3 branches right before my eyes. The branches gloomed and grapes appeared and ripened. I took them grapes and squeezed them into the Pharaoh's cup so my master could drink." Joseph nodded thoughtfully. "The 3 branches mean that in 3 days' time, the Pharaoh will pardon you and give you your old job back. You will be his butler once more." The man's eyes were wide with surprise. "If this is true, then it is wonderful and you are a marvel." "Joseph, how can I repay you?" "Please mention me to the Pharaoh." Joseph replied, "I was kidnapped and brought to this country against my will, then falsely accused. I don't deserve to be here." "Of course," promised the butler. Next, the baker told his dream. He was eager for good news, just like his fellow prisoner. "I am carrying 3 baskets of bread," he said. "I was taking them to the Pharaoh, but birds kept eating out to the top basket. What does it mean, Joseph?" Joseph looked at his baker with pity in his eyes. "The 3 baskets are the 3 days. Within 3 days, the Pharaoh will have you executed. I'm so sorry." The baker shook his head. "This can't be true. But 3 days later, the Pharaoh pardoned his butler and had the baker put to death, just as Joseph had predicted. Joseph waited patiently for the butler to tell the Pharaoh about his misfortune, but eventually he knew that the man must have forgotten him. Joseph could do nothing but pray to God and wait. 2 years passed until one night the Pharaoh had a terrifying dream. He woke up with a start, sweating all over. But when he finally fell back to sleep, he dreamed again. In the morning, he was worried. When a man as important as I am had such dark dreams, it must mean something, he thought. So he called for the wisest men in Egypt and told them his dreams, but not one could tell him what that might mean. Finally, the butler came to the Pharaoh looking embarrassed. I have just remembered something, or rather, someone who might be able to help you. Speak, the Pharaoh commanded. When I was in prison for angering you, I met a young man from Canaan named Joseph. He told me that my dream meant I would be released in 3 days. He also said that your former baker would be put to death. The butler paused. Both those things came true. The Pharaoh's eyes gleamed with excitement. Well, don't just stand here, go and get him. Joseph was brought out from his prison blinking in the bright sunlight. When he had shaved and changed into clean clothes, he came before the Pharaoh. Tell me, Joseph, can you interpret my dreams for me? They are deeply troubling. Joseph shook his head. No, I cannot. The Pharaoh turned to the butler and was about to order the guards to take him away for telling lies when Joseph went on. I cannot interpret dreams, said Joseph, but if you tell me what you saw, then God will tell you their meaning through me. The Pharaoh looked curiously at Joseph. Well, at first I dreamed that I was standing beside the Nile when 7 fat glossy cows climbed up onto the bank. After them came 7 hideous cows that were as scrawny as walking sacks of bones. The Pharaoh shuddered at the memory. I have never seen such ugly cows in the land of Egypt. But it gets worse. The skinny, ugly cows devoured the plump and glossy, skinny and sick as they had in the beginning. Joseph listened carefully, nodding all the while. The Pharaoh went on to tell Joseph the second dream. As I fell back to sleep, I saw 7 ears of corn, healthy and golden, growing on a single stack. But then 7 new ears grew, and these once new and withered and thin, scorned by the sun and the wind. The withered ears of corn and the wholesome, healthy corn, the Pharaoh sighed. I have told these dreams to the wisest men in the world, but no one could tell me what they might mean. Joseph waited to be sure that the Pharaoh had finished. Pharaoh, he said eventually, the 7 fat cows and the 7 healthy ears of corn stand for 7 years of plenty. The Pharaoh clapped his hands. That is good. Thank you, Joseph, but what about the rest? Joseph looked serious. The thin, ugly cows and the withered ears of corn means the 7 years of famine will follow the 7 years of good years. The Pharaoh groaned. That is terrible. It doesn't have to be, said Joseph. If you put a wise man in charge of farming in Egypt, he will make sure that you store enough food in the years of plenty to see you through the exam. With a little planning, the people need not starve. The Pharaoh leaped to his feet and clapped Joseph on his back. Then he should begin today. Since God has chosen him as his manager, surely there is no one better suited to do his job than you. The Pharaoh pulled a beautiful ring from his finger and put it onto the Joseph's finger. From now on, everyone will do what you say, and you will rule the kingdom for me. Joseph bowed his head. As you wish, he said, and as God wishes. The Pharaoh dressed Joseph to linen clothes and hung a gold chain around his neck. They rode together in the Pharaoh's chariot, and all of the Egypt bowed down before Joseph. For the next 7 years, Joseph worked hard day and night. He went all over Egypt, commanding farmers to store their grains. As the harvest came and went, Joseph made sure that Egypt had so many years of corn stored up that grains of corn were almost so plentiful as grains of sand beneath the sea. When the famine came, Joseph had predicted, the people of Egypt cried out to the Pharaoh for food. Ask Joseph, the Pharaoh told them. And when the people came to him, Joseph brought out the stored grains, and everyone had enough to eat. Soon, word spread to other countries. There was famine far and wide, and people of many nations came to buy again from Joseph. Far away in Canaan, Joseph's father Jacob learned that there was food in Egypt. My son, he said to his children, go to Egypt and buy grains so he will not starve. He sent 10 of his sons away, but he kept Benjamin with him. He couldn't bear the thought that anything might happen to his youngest boy. When the brothers arrived in Egypt, they rushed to see Joseph. Flinging themselves on the ground before him, they begged him to sell them grain. We have nothing, they said. Please don't let us starve. As they looked up at Joseph, he recognized the brother who had sold him to the Ishmaelites all those years ago. But they did not know him. He was finally dressed and in charge of an entire kingdom, whereas the brother they remembered had been sold as a slave. Joseph kept his expression cold and calm. Although his heart was pounding, my brothers are going before me, just like the dream God sent me long ago. Who are you and where are you from? He demanded. We are the sons of Jacob of Canaan, said Reuben, the oldest brother. We will live there with our youngest brother Benjamin. We did have another brother, but he is gone now. Reuben looked to his floor, his cheeks flushed with shame. The brothers looked guilty at one another. Joseph wondered at this. Are they sorry for what they did? He decided to test them. Keeping his face stamped, he spoke in a resounding voice. I suspect you to be foreign spies. He said, I will sell you food, but you must bring your youngest brother Benjamin to me as a token of your goodwill. I will keep another of you here until you return. Joseph pointed to one of his brothers named Simeon. I will keep him. The brothers were afraid and started to talk amongst themselves in their own languages. They did not realize that Joseph, a foreigner in his eyes, knew what they were saying. This is all happening because of what we did, and Joseph, said Reuben. It's a punishment. I knew we should not treat him so badly. I would have done more to stop you. The brothers hung their head. We have done a terrible thing. Joseph had to turn away because he was crying. That's truly sorry, he thought, but he was still not sure if they had charged their cruel ways. Just because they are sorry now, it doesn't mean they won't do it again. He realized that he sent the brothers home with their grain. They returned some time later when Benjamin in tow. Just as they had promised, Joseph welcomed them gladly and sold them more grains. I will release your brother Simeon. Come and have a meal at home. He spoke to them all, but he was looking at Benjamin. Tears pickled his eyes. He would miss his younger brother very much. As they ate, Joseph gave the boys second, third, and even fourth helpings. How's your father? Is he well? He asked the brothers. Very well, they replied, thought mournfully, a rich fool. Joseph was glad. He longed to see his father again, but there was one last test he needed to do to make sure that the brothers were no longer wicked men. As the brothers packed their bags to go, Joseph slipped a magnificent silver cup into Benjamin's sack. The brothers were leaving on their donkey when Joseph ran after them, crying, "Halt! A thief has stolen my precious cup. You are the only people who came to win in my house. Open your bags." In shock, the brothers all pulled open their sacks. Each one held only the grains and other supplies that Joseph had given them, except Benjamin. Silver glinted amongst the corn. Joseph snatched up the cup. "How dare you betray my hospitality, you young man?" cried Joseph. "I will throw you in jail for your crime." Reuben stepped forward. "Please, sir, don't do this. Benjamin is just an innocent boy. He cannot have done this. I think God might have punished us for a terrible crime committed years ago. Please let him go and take us instead. We deserve it for what we did to our long-lost brother Joseph. You must surely be dead by now." With that, Joseph broke down in tears. "It's true," he sobbed. "You have really changed. Oh, my brothers, I forgive you." He looked around at them, his eyes filling with tears. "I'm your brother, Joseph." Joseph held out his arms and embraced his choked brothers while they cried and told him how sorry they are now. "I think God meant this to happen," said Joseph. "He sent me there to save you all. For if I had not become a ruler in Egypt, I could never have given you food and you would have starved." So Joseph and his brothers were reunited at last. Joseph sent for his father too. When the old man arrived in Egypt, he fell at Joseph's feet, thanking God that his son was safe. The Pharaoh declared they should all live together in Egypt since their family had been apart for so long. Joseph thanked the Pharaoh, but in his heart he knew that all the thanks belonged to God, that one who had brought him to his land and given him the power to save his life. आज के वीडियो में बस इतना ही. मिलते हैं हमारे अगले वीडियो में. तब तक के लिए थैंक्स फॉर वॉचिंग एंड द 7th episode of Bible Storytime series will be out soon. Like, share and subscribe if you haven't already, and bye bye.